Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and a very special day today, as it's actually the first day that I'm using the new computer to do the recording on this. So please do bear with me, no pun intended, if there's any sort of technology fuck-ups, because, well, if there's anything to go off of in the past, that would be it. And we have plenty to talk about today as far as the short and medium-term timeframes go. I do believe that we are still in the process of seeing yesterday's short-term ideas start to play out, and Bitcoin's molassesy-like construction going on in the higher-term timeframes probably going to be more or less frustrating for the next, I don't know, week or two or whatever it ends up being. On top of all that, I may be on Twitch today. We'll see. If I'm not, Elsa will certainly be on, and she can be found at Elsa69. The link for my Twitch is in the description below. I will be uploading to my gaming channel for anyone who happens to give a fuck. Of course, again, as always, please do not subscribe there or feel obligated to go there if you're not interested in like strategy games and whatnot. As well, that's pretty much the focus as far as Total War goes. Anyways, other than that, what else do we want to talk about? Yes, the Krown trading application is right here in front of your very eyes. We've seen about 200 million being added to the open interest from yesterday to today when we last spoke, now hovering around 2 billion spot 700 million, looking like. And Bitcoin, technically speaking, is closer and did give a test to the downside long-term area that we spoke about yesterday. So that will be brought into the analysis as well. Keep that number in the back of your mind's eye, as I do want to continue to document this as time goes onwards and forwards, because it is new for myself as well, as we now are officially documenting all major exchanges in the cryptocurrency landscape for reading the open interest. Bitcoin dominance still at a 65.5%, so no movement there. Really don't have anything to add to that I haven't said yesterday. Still long-term bullish on it. Short, medium-term, maybe another percent down to those more medium-term levels, but I don't see any sort of structure being broke based upon that. Other than that, everything else steady here, looking like the crypto fear and greed index didn't even move from yesterday. So let's go take a look at good old price action, because at the end of the day, well, that is the most important thing. It's what the liquidation engine is based upon. And looking at it right on over here, starting off with the lower term timeframes for, let's actually go to a completely, or no, I do have a completely new chart here. Yeah, I deleted all of my drawing tools here so we can do it again together. If you want to hold hands and do this with me. And basically the lower term time frame and the higher term time frame region to the downside is essentially one and the same right now. Still at that 8,600-ish level right here. I do have a $100 region, although if we wanted to make this a little bit more surgical, I would actually make it a $50 region, or even a little bit less than that, between 8,650 and an 8,600 region for the lower liquid zone. Now, if Bitcoin does start to close 4-hour dildos below this region, I do believe that we will see the next big breakdown very likely occur. This is the blue box that I've been looking at for the last, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, I suppose, which we'll put another one in right here right now, and see how that aligns. Again, coming in with the last liquid zone of our last prior low. So technically speaking, as long as Bitcoin is above this level, is it creating a higher low? Technically, yes. Does it look like the picture of health and fitness? Technically, no. Because what is Bitcoin in the process of doing right now with the information that we have? Well, we do have a series of lower highs on the, on the higher term time frame scales. Hey, stay right there. Hold on. Now you see why I sometimes do this before. It's very difficult to draw. But Bitcoin has a damn good history of kind of playing off these sort of triangular formations on its long-term reversals, both to the upside and the downside. More recently, we saw the same thing back on over here. Which I'll briefly plot on out, where Bitcoin put in its $10,500 high, the last major high that we saw in the macro, before putting in a ascending triangle, and then the rest was history before actually putting in a little bit of a fucked up ascending triangle right here on the reversal to the upside. Same thing on this major high right here during the last China news. I think this one was about 10.5 as well. Same sort of thing though. Relatively similar formation there in the form of a descending triangle. Of course, everyone's probably familiar with this one, the $14,000 high in June, July of last year, 2019, almost 1 year ago, putting in the major top right there. And then of course the major ascending triangle to the upside being broken in early 2019 right here, before that absolutely phenomenal run from basically 4,000 to 14,000. So pretty damn good. Bitcoin likes to play off its triangles. I like triangles as well. They just seem to work out pretty damn well in cryptocurrency land, and they do have some of the higher efficacy and hit rates for patterns for all the pattern traders out there, of which I'm not one myself. I don't consider myself a pattern trader. But if I were to choose one pattern that I do like, triangles of any sorts, that being ascending triangles, and symmetrical triangles, seem to always provide a lot better hit rate. I believe from the studies that I've seen done, they do have a little bit over 70%, which is tradable. I mean, that's a good enough edge. But at the end of the day, just because it is a ascending triangle doesn't mean that we're always going to break out to the downside. Just means that statistically speaking, it's a lot more likely to. And the levels for kind of judging a breakout or breakdown are more or less the same on the higher term timeframes, as long as they're above, especially 8,600, and maybe to a more conservative extent, 8,500. I would say that this is still, within the context of the consolidation. However, if that were to break to the downside, I would look for a relatively quick move down to the 8150-ish level, kind of where these last little spiky spike territories are. And then below that, you can see that we do have this 7450-ish level mapped out right here before that nice breakout from this liquid zone. And then, of course, below there, we have this guy right here, right around the upper 6,000s, at around about 68, 6,900-ish region. All of these areas naturally should line up with fibs, which let's go check them out right now. Taking one from the ultimate low to the ultimate high of the last run, or actually, should we go more than that? Yes, we should go more than that for the last $10,500 run right here. You see that this one's working very, very well. The last short-term region that we broke below, 9,100, was a 236. The 382 has us right around 8,100. The 0.5 is that 7450-ish level, and the 618 is actually right around 67, 6800-ish region. Not sure exactly if I'm doing this super accurate, because I want to be looking at these pivots right here. Yes, there we go. Okay, now, yeah, there we go. Looking a little bit better right there. Depending upon whether we use wicks or not, I would say that this is still within the same region. So I do like that. Overall, I do think that Bitcoin is very likely to hit down to the low $7,000 region if, again, major if here, I'm making an assumption. I'm making a big bad assumption. Krown's making an assumption. If Bitcoin does break 8,600 on a 12-hour or daily total closure, yeah, I do believe that we will probably head back down to 70, low 7,000, upper 6,000, very, very likely, with bounces along the way on the areas that I kind of outlined right here. Low 8,000 between around 8,100 right here, then 74 to 7,500 right here, and then probably down to about 6,900 after that, which is just a great number. By the same token, the short term is a little more interesting right now, because while I've just spoken about the downside quite a bit here, I actually don't think that Bitcoin is ready or has enough momentum built up on the lower term timeframes to break just yet. If it is going to break to the downside, I do think that it's likely to probably retest these regions down around 87, 8,600-ish region, but I don't think that it actually will, or assuming that we don't get a closure below, naturally momentum should shift back onto the upside for another very likely bounce into the low 9,000s, and with potential to reverse the trend if and only if we do an equal but opposite impressive move to the upside, which would be above our last prior high at 9,800 on a daily closing or a 12-hour closing basis. So I'll mark that one off as well. I would be happy to get bullish for another, what price point? Basically 10,000 for another $1,500 move, very, very likely, if Bitcoin can close a daily dodo above 9,800. If it can do that, yes, very, 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 very likely, we will at the very least see 10,500, the last major high from that failed rally about a month or two prior in late February, and just by getting back there, could it double top out again? Yeah, of course, it's probably gonna have a short-term pullback, of course, but realistically, if Bitcoin even just trades above this prior high at 10,500 or closes above it on a daily closing, on a weekly closing basis, which is actually only 10,150, then I would look for extension for another $1,100. Well, depending upon which point that you're using, to that $11,500 region, which is the super macro area. That's the area that I think is the most relevant for all the Moon and Doom boys. We've seen this area being respected for the last more than 2.5 years now, I think, going all the way back to early January before this 50% meltdown from 11.5 to 6,000. Then again, another double rejection a month later in February at the same level. Then again, about a year later, or a little bit less than a year later, in July 2019 at 11.5. Then again, a month later after that in August 2019. And if we do look at the volume profile, it would suggest that anywhere above, even anywhere above 10.5, it's pretty big change of behavior here from a volume profile perspective, but that is exponentially higher above 11.5. And I'd just generally be insanely bullish on Bitcoin, looking for 16,000, 20,000, and probably beyond. But again, that's well and far away right now. Of course, right now Bitcoin's a little bit more close to those downside supports, which means that there's very likely going to be a higher probability of breaking to the south side rather than the north side from this current posturing, as you would naturally think. But here's the thing. I do want to go over this, which I want to preface this conversation by saying no. Let's go through the lower term timeframes first. All right, so I did say that I think Bitcoin's actually likely to attempt another bounce here into the lower 9,000s before potentially continuing lower. And the way that I kind of be looking at that is essentially the same way as yesterday. If Bitcoin can take out this $9,000 area right here on even a 2-hour dildo closure, then I would look for extension all the way up to about 9.3 and very likely 9.5 after that. I do think that there'd be a quick scalp probably at 9.3, but personally speaking, I do think that 9.5 would very likely get tested after that. And that's where we're kind of in the fuckboy region, as I related that concept yesterday, where it's still, it looks good. It's a nice rally. It's almost $1,000 rally from here. But it's just another lower high. As long as it's below 9,800, it's just another lower high. And with the sort of pattern de jour that we've seen on Bitcoin over the last really since the eternity with these triangles, as long as it's put in lower highs, it's very difficult to get excited about. And what I fear here is that if Bitcoin does put in another macro lower high right here, I mean that's almost going to be going on 3 years of lower highs. It's going to start to look like a dead heartbeat a little bit. And while I do think that, aiming towards low 7,000, upper 6,000 is incredibly likely if that were to happen, really have to start to entertain ideas of this thing coming, much further south than that over a long period of time. I mean, this is what the chart really looks like on linear scale. It's not necessarily the picture of health and fitness if it puts in another lower high right here. I really don't like that read if that were to happen, but I'm making assumptions right now. So again, to kind of wrap up the lower term timeframes, yes, 8,600 is still kind of the area that I'm looking at for the lower term timeframes. If you want to be super conservative, I'd use 8550-ish region. But if that area does get broken, I would be looking for a quick move down to about 8,100 region. That should not just be that, I think it was a 382 fib that we were looking at, but it's also the 200 simple and 200 exponential average, as you can see on the daily as well. So usually going to get respected there for at least a short-term, medium-term bounce. Could it be that it reverses from that region? Yeah, it could. It could, of course. Anything's possible, but I need to see price action prove itself by getting back above, at the very least, 9,000 before I say that this is, likely a reversal. I know a lot of people are looking at this as a falling wedge right here. Technically, it does fit the bill for a falling wedge. The problem with falling wedges is that they just typically don't work out themselves. So I hate wedges with a passion. I'm a wedge racist. I think that you should throw them all in the fucking Holocaust and burn them. They're terrible. They're absolutely terrible. And I'm going to get demonetized, which I hate. No, don't demonetize me, YouTube, for my fucking $5 that you might give me in advertisement revenue. Oh, it's a travesty. No. Oh, well, whatever, man. You'll never hear me say, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell. Smash the bell. Smash that shit right on up. But if you go over to my gaming channel, I actually do want you to subscribe there. Not here, though. I actually don't want people to subscribe here. Do not subscribe to this channel. It's not, you don't want to do this lifestyle. You don't want to do this. I'm telling you right now. It's for the true fucking well, look at my hair, man, and that should be an insight for you. All right, there we go. Without saying any other words. Alrighty, so technically, yes. Is it a falling wedge? Yeah, it actually does fit the bill. Volume signature would be proper on it. Shape and size works out as well. I'm curious if we have it on the RSI. No, actually, no, we don't. So I'd say probably not, but we do have a little bit of a falling channel there. More importantly, if it does break above 8,950, 9,000-ish region, or take out yesterday's high at 9,014.5 on Mexico, I do believe that we would see, again, at the very least, a move to 9,300. Very likely a move extension, though, to 9,500 if this area is taken out on, at the very least, a 2-hour dildo closure. I do think that would happen. Keep in mind, lower-term timeframe oscillators are kind of primed here, actually, for a nice move. We have seen we've seen 4-hour Stokes got beaten up quite a bit, putting in a higher low right there. Not that it really matters, but more importantly, I do think that we're kind of getting ready for a test of this trend line in the neutral zone, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish. 4-hour Joule has switched around to pressure off. I would say, pressure off, and maybe even lining up for a buy signal around the end of the week. If I'm making a huge assumption here, I should not talk about that. I apologize. No, I take that back. It's a nothing thing, but maybe a little bit around the end of the week. We might have something to look at. Looking at the 4-hour RSI. I don't really see anything of particular interest here. No divergences to be spoken of to the whether it's hidden bull or hidden bull, crouching tiger. No, whether it's bullish or bearish divergence of the regular or hidden varieties. The other interesting thing that I see is historical volatility percentile is still maintaining the positive slope on this read after taking out the last kind of trend line that we've been looking at from early May, and also trading not trading above, but posting a higher a percentile above our last few spikes here. So that tells me that we're probably breaking the short-term trend relatively soon. I would actually look for this to continue to expand, especially if this next 4-hour confirms both a positive slope on the moving average for this, and it gets above that trend line as well. If both those things happen, I do think that we're going to continue on the expansion phase on the lower term timeframes. But that's an expansion phase on the lower term timeframes. How does that fit into the context of the higher term timeframes when we look at like the 12-hour or the daily? I think the 12-hour actually gets it relatively well. Well, you can see here on the 12-hour, we're still kind of contracting over the longer period of time. And with the moving average on the historical volatility percentile, it is kind of in the process of flattening out. Can it get a positive slope? Maybe. If those two things happen together, then I would expect that 4-hour historical volatility percentile to then transfer into the higher term timeframes, which is going to allow much more expansion, which likely does, provide the impetus for Bitcoin testing into the middle of the 9,000s again. That's essentially what I'd be looking for. So if you are just trading from a volatility perspective or historical volatility percentile perspective, I would be looking for those two pieces of price action to be accompanied by each other with those two reads on those two timeframes, and that should be enough to at the very least get it back up to about 9,500. Again, does that mean that I'm just like blindly bullish from that standpoint? I wouldn't necessarily say that from there. Again, it needs to get above 9,800 for myself on a 12-hour or daily closing, nothing less, unless if you just see like a 4-hour overtake this high right here at about 1085 and a half on Mexico. I wouldn't read too much into it. But back onto the lower term timeframes for now, we do see, as we just looked at, Stokes are up. But let's see, what price action do they need to hold in order to remain to the upside? About 8,800. So I do think that, looking at these lower term timeframes, we probably do come back down and grind this area out a little bit. But assuming that it just doesn't have enough momentum to break, I would look for that to get bought on up and then actually flip back around with kind of like the short term resolution point, again, at the same area as yesterday, about 8,950 on a 4-hour closure, or just 9,000, or just even using this last prior wick high. I think all of those would be fine to judge my own trades off. Of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I do think I do think that would probably be enough. We do see 3-hour Stokes also flip flopping around for a little bit of snake to the upside. More importantly, we do see 3-hour Jewel actually flipping around to a support posture as well. This would be a little bit of a halt or long signal. I don't trust it just yet. I really want to see it line up for something more perfect along with the 4-hour, maybe later this week. But it's in the cards and it is building. So if not now, probably later this week. I do think that there will be something to report there. Looking at 3-hour historical volatility percentile, very much crushed. And well, when you're crushed into the single digits, there's only one way to go. And this one will remain to the upside as far as momentum goes, as long as Bitcoin price action is closing above 88.34.7. Let's see how the 2-hour kind of mediates these two. Yeah, 88.22.5 will remain to the upside as long as we're above there. And hourly going to be showing 88.50 needs to close above in order to get back around there. So to me, looking at the bifurcation between the hourly, 2-hour, and then the 3-hour and the 4-hour, it likely aligns with another try back down here, 8,700-ish region. But assuming that Bitcoin doesn't have the momentum to actually break it and destroy one of the critical levels, as we spoke about on especially the higher term timeframes, although the 4-hour probably gets it as well, to be fair. I would be skeptical of looking for like the big break from here just yet. I do think that it's probably within the cards, and definitely within the realm of possibility, and we'll look at probabilities in just a bit. But these things take time, and how many times, if you've been in this market for even just 2 years now, you're a fucking vet at this point, because you've seen a lot of these things a few times a year actually by this point. You know, Bitcoin loves its consolidations to its macro reversal consolidations to absolutely just tire the shit out of people by boring them to death and then moving when no one's looking. I mean, this was one of the most boring times in Bitcoin's history right here. Same thing right here. Same thing right here. And more recently in these areas right here and right here. So I would be cognizant of that fact, as that is kind of like the way that Bitcoin likes to behave, I suppose. Looking at the daily, we do see that historic volatility percentile here is incredibly low as well, but I do think that it is still within the overall context of this contraction phase over the long period of time. This is probably speaking towards the macro, though. This is very likely speaking towards the macro. We could get another expansion phase, hit this trend line, and now just be, you know, another that could very easily be a multi-$1,000 move. But would it break any of the macro areas, you know, above 10.5 or below, let's call it like 7,000? I don't think so. I think it'd be good enough to test one of those regions. So it's good to keep in mind what's going over in the overall context of the long term. So this probably speaks to the macro here, but I'd really need to see another test up to this trend line, and then for it to come down again for me to buy into that. But for right now, we can see that it's formulating, and it does look like it is, you know, it is a good honest read. Daily Jewel, again, make me feel fucking stupid for discounting the signal that we saw over this weekend. Krown stupid, Jewel not stupid. Anytime that I've disagreed with the Jewel, I've been wrong every fucking time. I think there's been 5 major occurrences in the last like year and a half, and every fucking time I just don't seem to learn my lesson. Now I didn't trade over the weekend anyways, so it was kind of like a non-event for me to begin with, but fair enough. You know, the Jewel once again getting it right, calling the top somewhere right around 9,800ish region. Didn't get the ultimate top at 10,000, but got it good enough. And that so far has been like what, a 12% move, pretty good. Usually on a daily Jewel signal though, you will get more. But did it line up for the same thing on CMEs? Well, no, it didn't. It's kind of like a nothing signal on CMEs right here. In fact, looking at CMEs, I'm curious if there anything of interest on the lower term timeframes. Yeah, really solidifying that 8,600-ish level as the big bat support to hodl, if you want to call it that. But I do feel like this thing is kind of cooked for another anemic rally at the very least. Looking at 4-hour RSI, we do see that it will be in the process of creating a little bit of divergence. If it does come back down, it's actually in the process of creating hidden bearish divergence right now. So I do think that it will swipe these lows again at 8,800 at the very least, maybe even all the way down to 8,650, 8,700-ish region for CMEs. But does it have the momentum to break is a real question, and I don't. I mean, I shouldn't give my opinion on that. Either it does or doesn't. You know, does it break the level or not? You know, that's what's tradable. My opinion is not tradable, sir. Anyways, okay, cool. I've already been recording for 22 minutes and I haven't said anything. Fuck me, man. What else do we want to look at? 12-hour Stokes. What are they looking like here? They are technically down right now. What would it take to cross them back up to the upside? As long as Bitcoin price action closes above 87.50, it will cross back up to the upside. So essentially what I'm looking here is another test back down, 87, maybe even 86. But assuming that the 12-hour closes above 87.50, I would be kind of looking overall for a bouncy bounce into the mid to low 9,000s. Again, assuming that the critical area on the short-term time frame region at 89.50 on a 4-hour closure, or just a move above yesterday's high at like $9,010 odd would be good enough to call that bounce at the very least to 93. Personally speaking, I do think that we get to 95 and then go into the decision phase of is this another lower high or not. Historic volatility percentile on the 12-hour also very low. I think that we already mentioned that. Daily, is there anything else of interest here? Potentially hidden bullish divergence in play? Potentially. I mean, it would be in play if we confirm a local low here. And if we do confirm a local low here, how would that be had? By moving above yesterday's high, essentially, at this point, or closing a 4-hour above 89.50. I think both of those two pieces would do it and very likely send us back up, like I said, at the very least in 93, probably 95, though. Probably 95. And from a major movement average perspective, this thing is still bullish, to be fair. Not really wise to be bearish on something that has a golden cross and is still actually diverging away from each other. But as long, the second that we lose the 55 here at where? At 85.50 or 8,600, depending upon how long it takes to test it, well, that's when it really goes into question once again now, doesn't it? But here's the thing, daily, 2-day, and 12-hour, all from a major moving average perspective are actually decent. The 3-day looks like a sick puppy. Don't like that one. Just look away if you want to be bullish. bullish. But again, same, if it can put in a higher low here by just not closing below 8,600, it will confirm hidden bullish divergence, and that should be good enough to test the top side of the range. So that's why I say 9,500 still, assuming that those conditions are met. Now, keep in mind, monthly is going to be closing relatively soon, as we only have, as far as like the real trading week, only 2-3 days left. But it does close in, I think, 4 days, 5 days. Close on the 31st, according to my calendar there. Any sort of a monthly close above 93.50, and I will get very bullish for, at the very least, test back up to 11,000, 11,500. That would kind of confirm this structure as a reversal structure. But for right now, it's looking a little bit more like a doji dildo, which is a sign of indecision, perhaps even reversal. So if we do close something like this, or especially even lower by end of month, I'd be looking for this to, at the very least, come back down to low 7,000 again. But momentum oscillators here still looking okay. Monthly Stokes looking to cross the upside, and will confirm to the upside if Bitcoin just closes above 77.50 before end of month. So good, I think a good chance it does that. Monthly Joule going to give a continuation haul to your long signal, and monthly RSI would confirm above the exponential as well, and it only needs to close above 81 or basically 8,200 in order to confirm that. So I do like this for the long term. I think it still does kind of favor the bulls here, but it's almost like a do or die situation over these next like 4 to 5 days, I do think. So I know that Bitcoin's very, very boring right now, but for like the actual traders out there, this is really the time to be paying attention, because I do think that next big move is cooking here. And anytime that we go into a long form consolidation, it's building up a cause, if you're familiar with Wyckoff terms. And if it's building up the bigger, or the longer that it goes into a consolidation, the longer, or the bigger the effect that is implied from that consolidation. So I'm looking at this with intentful eyes. I don't think it's ready just yet, but I do think that probably around the time that the monthly closes, it's very, 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 very likely. Let's go check out traditional markets really quick. NASDAQ hitting our $9,600 target and backing off from it. I don't have anything to add on to it as of right now. I do think it's very likely to remain bullish coming into the next couple months, but I want to see something first. I feel like we've had all the moves that we were looking for on traditional markets for a while now. We called I wouldn't say that I called the bottom right here, but I did call a reversal back around this area right here when it was rallying back up. For the macro, I said this thing is very unlikely going lower, and if this thing closes above even 9,000 or especially even 8,950, I'm looking for new all-time highs over the next few months. I would look at this as insanely bullish. This is what the real chart looks like. This is a very, call it what you want to call it, but it's an uptrend, and it's a very powerful one at that. So I don't really care what it's doing here in the lower term timeframes. I think that that's more or less a distraction. I'm long-term bullish on it still, but does it have a test back down to like 91.50 before the end of the month? I think that's very likely, but any sort of a monthly close, especially above 9,000, and I'm bullish for the next month or two, very, very likely. It will, we just saw the expansion in historic volatility percentile on the monthly come on that downside spike, which is where it typically puts in these major lows, as you can see. Maybe better seen on a weekly, actually, but you can see the same thing here. Hidden bullish divergence on the weekly low, but that's already played out, to be fair. I do think that we probably hit a local high here, though. I do think that it's very likely to have hit a local high. Probably trades back down to 91.50, 9200 before end of month, but assuming that monthly closes above 9,000, long term, very good. E-mini futures still looking good to me, actually, here, but if NASDAQ is kind of backing off a little bit, should I be bullish on this? Probably not, but I'd really wait for today's daily little closure. Anywhere above 3,000, and I would target 310, 313 region, as I've been saying. I still do think that it's looking very constructive here. It looks like a nice ascending triangle breakout to the upside, and yeah, I'd still kind of stick with that 30. What is it, like 312, 313 target? Something like that. Momentum oscillators look more or less good. I think it's getting a little bit extended here, but I think probably another stab to the upside sets it up for a good monthly close as well. Any sort of a monthly close, especially above 3,000, is going to be interpreted very, 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 very well by the market for extension to, the prior high before, realistically, and probably beyond. It's going to be the same thing as NASDAQ. NASDAQ leads, though, right now. So a strong NASDAQ is strong for everyone else. But you're kind of seeing rotations in the market right now. You're seeing techs back off a little bit, and you're seeing kind of like the junk rally, and that's usually the sign of the overall phase coming to a little bit of a short-term end or medium-term end, perhaps better said. So in that case, I would be looking for I'd be looking for sideways and a little bit down in Nasdaq, and for everything else to kind of like rise up and catch up a little bit, and then coming into next month, we should have a good clarity on what's going on once we see those closures. Other than that, what else do we want to look at? We can look at Butyrol. Gonna do whatever Bitcoin does. I mean, this chart's more difficult to read than Bitcoin, I think. Sideways does have higher lows, to be fair, but if Bitcoin moves down, I think this one moves down too. This one does have a very aggressive consolidation here, actually, on historical volatility percentile. I do think that this thing's setting up for a big breakout in the next week or two. Yeah, early June. I don't think it's there just yet, but it is setting up. That is looking very, very interesting, actually. Mrs. Litecoin looks like a downtrend, looks like absolute dog shit. Does have the death cross on the weekly. I mean, again, if Bitcoin goes up, do I think that Litecoin's going to go to the floor? No, but if I was just looking at Litecoin, I'd be like, this is this needs a soundboard. Is what it needs. So yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else that I'm missing before I sign on off? No, I think that's it. I'll quickly wrap up the. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm missing the expected moves chart. Okay, so I'll use 90.50 for the upside just because I feel like it errs a little bit more on the side of caution, and we'll go to the 12-hour. Let's see, is this future or no? We need current. Okay, probability of taking out the short-term upside region is 23, a little bit over 23.5%. By the same contracts, the short-term, medium-term, and long-term region to the downside, 19 and almost 3/4% on this next 12-hour closure. So that's very high for the downside. Don't let that deceive you. Technically, the upside is more likely here, but that's only for the short term. It doesn't really help the bulls long-term. For the daily, what would it say? 30.17% to the upside and 28.5% to the downside. Again, these are anything over 16% is within the strong possibility of happening at any moment in time. You have to be thinking in like a normal distribution or a log normal distribution, right? And anything above 16% is going to be above within the context of the first standard deviation. So it's decently high. Decently high. So both of these areas are very high, but because the lower area has so much more implications, it's a lot more dangerous and a lot more interesting from a trading perspective. We can go look at the 4 hours. Well, I suppose, why not? Showing 5.5% to the upside, 4% to the downside. So even on this next 4 hour closure, it's looking prime, man. It's looking. I think we're gonna get some short term action today. I think very likely around traditional markets open. So if I had to wrap up my thoughts, I think another swipe to the downside right here. But assuming that Bitcoin doesn't close a 4 hour dildo below, especially 8,600, but even for the more conservative people out there, and the more that I look at a 4 hour, it probably is more like 8,500. Right here on that last kind of spike low. I wouldn't get too gung-ho bearish, like red dildos thrown around. But, if that were to happen, I would look for a quick move down to 8,100 and probably another bounce there, and then continuation down to 75 and very likely 71 over the next month or so. By the same token, to the upside, I do think that Bitcoin probably tests down here, but probably doesn't have the much to break it down. Probably trades back up to 89.50-ish region, and if it can close a 4 hour above 89.50, or even just trade above yesterday's high at 9,014.5 on Mexico, I would look for a quick extension to 9,300, likely a short-term pullback there, and then I do personally think that the hidden bullish divergence on the semi-higher timeframes by that point would probably set it up for a move to test around 9,500. That's where the fuckboy region is, though, because it's still just another lower high there. So, you got to give it a chance, of course. But bulls are looking at this as higher lows. Bears looking at this as lower highs. Who wins out? Tune in next time on Dragon Balls. All right, guys, and gals, and other genders within the within this YouTube community. I want to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.